As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
All right, hey everyone, welcome into another episode of the Sleeping with the Numbers podcast. Dylan here, and on today's episode, we're going to be going through some best ball probabilities. If you play best ball, if you haven't, we'll discuss what best ball is, how it works, how you can get involved in it, and how to maybe or maybe not win some money playing on Underdog. So before we get into that, I do have a few updates for my season-long win totals for the NFL season. Not a ton of changes here. Really, the changes I have, let's run through division by division. AFC West, saying exactly the same. There's really not a ton that has changed my opinion about any of these teams when given the first week of preseason has completed. AFC North, same there. The AFC East, though. Some big moves there. Probably the biggest is Dalvin Cook signing with the Jets. Zeke signing with the Patriots. With that, I didn't move the Patriots at all. I don't really know if I feel much different about them with the addition of Zeke. It sounds like he's not really there yet, according to Belichick, but we'll see what happens there. However, with the addition of Dalvin Cook, that kind of tells me two things. One, they now have a solid backup for Breece Hall. And two, that means I don't think Breece is going to be ready to go beginning of the season. So getting Dalvin in there will give some relief, but Breece will eventually take over, I would think. But now they have a really good 1-2 punch at the running back position, and that'll be obviously something they're going to showcase here on Hard Knocks. Also sounds like Rodgers might be bringing in some help for his line because that offensive line is pretty bad. And the offensive line itself almost made me keep it the same and not giving them another win. But I do think the addition of Dalvin Cook can help this team. And if they do bring in some more line help, as it's kind of being hinted at, that is also good news for the team. Obviously, a win here and there doesn't really change much, but by the end of this, end of preseason, we will be locking in the season-long win total bets. I also took away a win from the Miami Dolphins. The biggest reason there is because of the injury to lineman Teron Armstead. He was carted off due to a leg injury. We don't know a ton about it right now, but that is a killer, especially when one, he's very good, and two, Tua obviously has concussion issues, and if he's going to be taking more hits because of the lack of depth at the in the line, that is not good for the team. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe that comes back up, but that did cause me to move them down, which again surprisingly has them getting less wins than the Patriots. It's just, it'll be an interesting thing to see how this progresses and how I feel about them by the end of the preseason. For the AFC South, mostly the same here. I did take a win away from the Colts. The Jonathan Taylor situation does not seem to be getting much better. Yes, he rejoined the team, but then he immediately left again. They say it's excused. They say it's personal reasons. They say it's not related to contract, but we'll see what happens there. I don't like when players do not participate in camp. There's a reason why football shape is a thing. They need to get these reps in. They need to be comfortable with the team, especially coming in with a new head coach and a new quarterback. He needs to get comfortable with that offense. So the more time he spends away, the less confidence I have in him understanding the team. And yeah, you can say, well, it's just a running back. He just needs to run the ball. Sure. But there's blocking schemes here that they're probably going to want to get going with Anthony Richardson probably running the ball. It's just not a good feeling there in Indianapolis. So I did end up taking a win away from them. Going over to the NFC, again, not a ton changing here. Let me take a look here. If my damn thing will show up. For the NFC East, pretty much the same all around. The big news is Sam Howell being announced starter for the Washington Commanders. That's good news. It's good to know who the starter will be. He can start getting in all of the first team reps. They're not switching back and forth. So that'll be good for the team, but does not change much about how I feel about them. So their win total is still staying the same for me. For the NFC North, I ended up giving the Vikings one more win, and that isn't so much related to the Vikings being better than I thought. It's more the Detroit Lions going down a little bit in my mind. There's still that hype around the Detroit Lions, watching them play, and now they're Jameson Williams, who's going to be out for 6 weeks anyways with his suspension. Now he's hurt. So, he's not going to get really any reps during the preseason, and that's not great for him, who should be basically their starting wide receiver. But it might be a rough time early on in the season for the Lions. I know they got the run game going, and that should be good, but it's going to be impossible to only rely on that. They got Sam Laporta, so maybe he can come in and clean up some of those targets. But I talked about it last week, but the hype around Detroit and the Jets is really high. So this is just me kind of coming down on them. For the NFC West, all the same here. For the most part, I did give the Cardinals another win. And the reason I did that was because Colt McCoy looked decent enough to be the replacement for Kyler while he's out. That was obviously the biggest worry for everyone, is like, oh, they don't have Kyler. They don't have a starting quarterback. Colt McCoy should be okay enough. And, maybe the reliance just comes to be more of on the other piece of the team, Hollywood, James Conner. But quarterback position, yes, it's still a massive downgrade from Kyler, but he did not look terrible this first week of preseason. I know it's preseason. We shouldn't always take everything away from it, because, he's probably not playing against the starters, of course. So, yeah, maybe he just looks better because of that. But in general, as a passer, he looked okay. They got, call it a comeback win, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, they look decent enough. Cole can get it done. I know he didn't play a ton, but he looked good enough that they took him off the field and then put in the other guys. So again, we'll continue to adjust with each week as each week progresses in the preseason, and we'll see where we land at the end of it. And then for the NFC South, no changes here at all. Pretty much all the same. However, I do continue to have my worries about the Saints. Kendre Miller still dealing with some injuries. He might not be there playing week one, at least not to full strength. And then you got to wonder what that does for the team. Can they only rely on Williams? Remains to be seen. For playoffs, everything's essentially the same. All the playoff teams are the same. And I still have it Chiefs, Eagles, Chiefs winning. So nothing really exciting there. So let's get into some exciting things, and that is best ball. So first off, I should probably start. What is best ball? Best ball, super easy. Basically, all you do is you draft players like normal, 12-man snake draft, and that's it. You just draft, and that's kind of it. Because each week, the computer behind the scenes will set the best possible lineup each week to give you the maximum amount of points. Pretty simple. Not really. So that sounds super easy, and it's great if you don't have the ability to pay attention all season long. Best Ball is a great option for you. So probably the biggest platform to play Best Ball is Underdog. There are a ton of platforms to do it. Underdog, DraftKings does it, FanDuel probably does it. But Underdog has a massive tournament called Best Ball Mania. They do it every year. Let me just kind of go through the rules. Essentially, it is at the beginning, you are in a normal league with 12 people. So weeks 1 through 14, you are in a normal league with competing against 12 other people, and you want to win your league, or in this case, you want to get in the top 2. If you are in the top 2, you move on to round 2, which is in week 15. Now you're grouped with 15 other people, 16 people total, and only the first place team from that group makes it to round 3. Yet again, you will be combined with 15 others for a 16-person group. And again, only the first place team makes it to the finals. And the finals is week 17, and that is where basically all of the money is. You will be up against 440 other players, so 441 total, including yourself, if you make it there. And first place gets $3 million. Second gets $1 million. Third, $300,000. Fourth, $150,000. Fifth, $100,000. So you can look at the full breakdown on their website of the payouts, but just know that the vast majority of the money is in the finals and is in week 17. So that's what Best Ball is. That's what Best Ball Mania is. It is not as simple as it sounds. I want to go through a few things. First, you need optimal roster construction. Now, that isn't what I'm going to cover in this video. Podcast show, whatever we want to call it. I will have a video up on our YouTube, Fantasy Podcast, PYANTASY. You can search us on there. I will have a video out there going over some roster construction. I made a simple Google sheet where I track my players, my roster construction as I go through a draft. So you can see how to put it to use. And I'm not taking credit for any of this. This is a lot of work from Fantasy Footballers, Kyle and Matt over at the Fantasy Footballers, the DFS and betting podcast. They're great. But also from Establish a Run, there is a fantastic article there that goes into tidbits of what you need to do to win Best Ball Mania, or what makes your best chance to win Best Ball Mania. That article on Establish a Run is massive, so take a good long poop and just read that the whole time. It is extremely interesting. So, like I said, I'm not going to go super into roster construction or anything like that. I just want to talk about some math and some probability of you winning this tournament. So some things to note here for the probabilities that I have used to calculate these things. This is assuming that every entry has an equal chance of winning. And that is just a very naive approach to this, and that is not true. And the reason that's not true is just what I said. You need to go for that optimal roster construction. There's going to be people who go and draft 4 quarterbacks. That's already putting them at a disadvantage and will likely have a lesser chance of winning this than others. Then there's going to be some other people who draft perfectly, and that gives them a better chance than others. So that is not assumed in this study that I did here. this is assuming that everyone has an equal chance of winning. Now again, that is not true, but still the numbers should be close enough to tell you just how, unlikely it is for you to win this thing. So, what are your chances of winning the $3 million? It's not going to be easy at all. So, let's break it down round by round, and then we'll go over the overall figures. So first, the first part of the tournament is, weeks 1 through 14. You're in a 12-person group, and you need to be in the top 2 to move to the second round. So that's pretty simple. Your probabilities are 2 out of 12, or 1/6. Easy enough. So given you do that, the next 2 rounds, you have a probability of 1 out of 16 to move from the second round to the third round, and from the third round to the fourth round. And fourth round can also be called the finals. So finally, given you did all of those previous things and you make it through the finals, you now need to finish in first place to win the $3 million. So that is a 1 out of 441 chance. So, cool. Those numbers are pretty low. That doesn't seem so bad. Not so fast. Because that is just round by round your probabilities of moving on to the next round, given you are in that round. So we need to bring it all together. How do you do that? Well, you just multiply all the odds together, and to get the probability of winning $3 million, the top prize, is 1 out of 677,376, or 0.000148% chance. Now, if you're familiar with Best Ball Mania and you've kind of looked at the contest and you're like, wait a minute, the probability is just 1 over the number of total entries. Yeah, it is. We could have just done that. We could have just gone 1 over 677,376. We would have ended up with the same thing and didn't have to do all of the math. But I still think it's a very good exercise to look at the odds of you making it through each round. So, that is not great. That is not great for your chances to win $3 million. I'm sorry, it just isn't. So just to kind of put that into perspective, I pulled up some fun odds of things you have a better chance of doing than winning Best Ball Mania. Winning an Oscar is 1 out of 11,500. That is shocking to me that it's so low to win an Oscar. But these aren't my numbers. I Googled these. so apparently winning an Oscar, 1 out of 11,500. Getting struck by lightning, 1 out of 15,300. Dying from bee stings, 1 out of 54,516. And finally, you have a better chance of becoming an Olympic medalist than winning Best Ball Mania. The odds of becoming an Olympic medalist, 1 out of 662,000. So, not great chances here. But you know me, I'm a degenerate. I'm not going to tell you not to play. If you don't play, you can't win. That's really what it is. And some of you may also know you can put in more than one entry. So that should help your chances. You can enter up to 150 times. Yeah, for sure. Well, yes, that kind of helps. But if we take the probability there, it's just 150 over 677,376. And you get roughly 0.02% chance of winning the top prize. That's a lot better, right? That is a lot better than what it was before, but still not great at all. You have better odds, but the odds are still a little less than the chance of being born with 11 fingers or toes. So, like I said, play. You should play. If you don't play, you can't win. That's really my big thing. Now, as I kind of put a note here for all types of betting, do not spend money you don't have. That's a pretty simple rule to follow in life. I know with credit cards and everything, it's too easy to do that. But if you have the money, you should play. So let's go through how I think the best approach is to Best Ball Mania. Number one, what I said, expect to lose. Be okay with losing this money. This should not be money that you need to pay rent or a mortgage, take your kids out to dinner, stuff like that. You need to expect to lose this money. The probabilities we just talked about show that. So first off, be okay with losing that money. If you're not okay with losing, don't play. The other thing, I've hit on this a lot already. Roster construction. You need to optimize your roster construction. So I highly recommend listening to the Fantasy Footballers, DFS and Sports Betting podcast, and taking a read on Establish the Run, the Best Ball Mania Manifesto by Mike Leone. That is massive. It is a really, really long article, but there is so much good information in it. But if you don't have time or you don't like reading, it makes your head hurt for whatever reason, I do have a video I will be putting out on YouTube that essentially takes all of the guidance from that article and from Kyle and Matthew Betts on the Fantasy Footballers podcast, and I put it into one video and show you how to use that information. Cool. The other thing is kind of similar to point one about being okay with losing that money. You need to be okay with your money just being tied up for months. In terms of sports betting and DFS, it is a long-term investment. You're not going to get any money if you win money until the end of week 17 of the NFL season. So you have a long wait with that money being tied up, similar to fantasy leagues. It's just kind of tied up there and you won't have it to use for other things. So with that all said, we talked about you're able to submit 150 entries, and the question might come to your mind, well, should I just always max out? Should I always put in 150 entries? That gives me my best chance. And you're not wrong. It does give you your best chance to win by maxing out. However, running some of the math here, your probability of winning or moving on to the next round kind of plateaus at around 25 to 50 entries. So that's a little maybe concerning, right? It's like, while yes, by maxing out entries, you will have the highest probability of winning it all, but it's not much better than if you put in 25 to 50 entries. I'll be putting out an article here on our Medium publication, and I have some nice charts here showcasing just that. So you get these kind of diminishing returns pretty quickly, and the amount of increased chance of winning it all after picks, like I said, 20 to 50 is kind of where it is, aren't very much. So that's rough. And the biggest part about it is your probability of making it, to the second round and to the third round. That goes up quite a bit as you approach 20 to 50 entries. However, the probability of making the finals, and even more importantly, the probability of winning it all, that stays relatively flat. So it's tough. So what does that mean? So in my mind, I'm not maxing out. The probability, yes, is the highest it can be, but it's not that much better. So, for example, if you were maxing out, it is $25 an entry for Best Ball Mania. So you were maxing out for $3,750. Instead, I am just doing 50 entries for $1,250. And that is basically the same odds as someone who is maxing out. Now, granted, if you max out, that is your best chance. But I'm thinking about how to put your money to best use. And that's what I'm doing. I'm putting only 50 entries in, and my odds of winning it all, my odds of advancing in the rounds, they're basically the same as someone who maxes out. So, with that said, if you are not putting in at least 20 entries into Best Ball Mania, I would not bother. There is a pretty clear jump from 1 entry to 20. And if you're not doing that, yes, you still have a chance, but you can do a lot more if you put in 19 more entries. So I understand if this is kind of a lot of numbers thrown at you. I'm a stats nerd, data scientist, whatever the hell label you want to put on me. But this is just how I'm thinking about it. Now, so if you have the bankroll to do this and you're okay with losing $3,750, max out. You know, that is your best chance. That's just the truth. But if you don't, just do 50 entries for a third of the price and have just about the same chance of winning it all as that person who's doing 150 entries. And then, if we even go and if you can't put up 50 entries, 150 entries, you really do need to at least put in 20. So if you put in 20 entries at $25 a piece, that is $500. So yes, while a single entry is $25 and it looks like, I can turn $25 into $3 million, it's very unlikely to happen. So unless you have that $500 to put in up front, I sound harsh a little bit, but don't do it. It just is not in your favor. You can put that money towards better things, whether that be playing DFS throughout the season, or just sports betting. Those might be better ways to use your money, because if you don't have that $500 to put in for the 20 entries in Best Ball Mania, I've said it like 6 times now. I'm a broken record, but don't do it. I'm trying to help you out. I'm trying to have you, one, get the most out of your money, which, the EV is obviously still negative for this contest, no matter how many entries you put in. But I also understand it's fun to think about winning that $3 million. And, I just don't want to see people throwing their money away. But that is pretty much the conclusion of this about Best Ball Mania. It really is fun. You probably have to get in pretty soon, especially if you want to do a slow draft. They have slow drafts for 8-hour picks, and then they have 30-second picks if you want to get one done quickly. It's fun. And I really do recommend reading the Best Ball Mania Manifesto, listening to Kyle and Matthew on the Fantasy Footballers. Those are some great resources to get you going in best ball. So that's a quick episode today, only 30 minutes. But you can also partner this episode with the videos I'm going to be putting up on YouTube, where I run through a couple Best Ball Mania drafts, and you can see how I put to use the information from the Best Ball Mania Manifesto and from the Fantasy Footballers, and I just turned it into one kind of nice Google sheet. I should probably put a link to the Google sheet in the description as well. So if you want to use it, you can make a copy and use it for your own drafts, and let me know how you like it. It has been extremely helpful to me, because a lot of the times, I see player names and I'm like, that'll be a good pick. But then after using the information you've learned from those other resources, it's week 17 that matters. So you really want to be stacking towards that. So that's where I'm going to end it here for this episode. Feel free to put comments or, post questions on Spotify, and I will get to them. You can also reach out to us at SWTN_podcast on it's not Twitter anymore, on X, I guess, and we can get back to you on there if you have any questions about the math around this. Please feel free to reach out. Yeah, I hope you take this information and use it well, and best of luck. If you win that $3 million, let me know. I'll be excited. Maybe we bring you on the show. We can talk about how you went about it, hopefully using some of the same resources that I have here and the information I'm throwing out. But yes, best of luck to everyone, and I will see you all again next week.